Last time we assembled the bombast cannon, so now it was time for our second part of my Warhammer 40k series to build the next model. For this diorama I chose the Scout Sentinel, which I always liked a lot because it reminds me of the AT-ST walkers from Star Wars. After assembling, I didn't glue every part together yet because it was much easier to paint the miniature when some parts are still separated. Especially the pilot, and since I have planned some lighting effects with LEDs, I had to fumble with the weaponry a lot. As always, I primed everything with my airbrush and black primer paint by Vallejo. For the color scheme I chose the same as for the bombast cannon in my last video. If you haven't seen that video, you can find that in the info box or in the video description down below. For the base coat I used US Dark Green by Vallejo. For highlighting I used Death Guard Green by Citadel and mixed it a bit with Silver Grey by AK Interactive. This time I applied all highlights by dry brushing. The metal parts were painted with gunmetal by Army Painter. The pilot was painted with the same green colors, and for his clothes I used US Field Wrap for the base coat and Light Earth, also by AK Interactive. I added a little bit of more vibrant colors for the details, like the headlight and the gas canisters on the side, to create a bit of contrast to the model. After the whole model was painted, I glued the pilot in his seat and he seemed very happy about it. Last but not least, I also applied some water decals and I was also happy with the finished paint job. Next up I did the wiring for the main weapon, which was a big las cannon. For the laser effect I attached a red LED filament on the muzzle, and to more or less hide the wires I drilled tiny holes all over the las cannon. Believe me when I say that getting the wire through the gun was not that much fun as I had imagined, but I did it successfully anyway. I also wanted to add a firing hunter-killer missile on the right side of the Sentinel, so I glued a yellow LED to the bottom of the missile, and the missile, including the LED, was attached to a toothpick. I also added a smoke trail that you will see later in the video. The miniature was almost finished, so the next part was to build a base for the model. I cut a piece of XPS foam into a 12 by 12 cm square with my hot wire cutter, and on top of that I also put a 10 by 10 cm MDF piece. Then I marked the spots of the Sentinel's legs and also the spot where I drilled a hole for the wires, which led to the power supply in the base. Since there was no power supply in place yet, I cut out big chunks of XPS with a hot wire hand tool, which was big enough to fit a 9-volt battery power supply that also had a power switch built into it. After that was done, I put some texture paste by AK Interactive on the MDF base. Unlike the bombast cannon, I wanted to create a different looking terrain for this piece. For the bombast I made an earthy ground and sprinkled some static grass on it. For the Sentinel I wanted to create a Mars-like surface, so a red and rusty color scheme. For some reason I just love to make this kind of underground for my models, because this is by far not the first project where I use this style. But we will paint the ground later, because this texture paste takes a bit of time to dry. In the meantime I created the smoke trail for the hunter-killer missile. Here I just used some hot glue and cotton wool. I also considered to use cushioning cotton, which is kind of fluffier, but I prefer this cotton wool, because in my opinion it creates a better smoke effect. Then I painted the XPS base with a black primer paint. And I also glued the MDF piece to the XPS base. Now it was time for the Mars-like style for the Sentinel's underground. As a base coat I used Doombull Brown by Citadel, which is technically a layer paint and not a base paint, but that doesn't really matter. The only difference is that Citadel layer paints are a little bit thinner than base paints, so it just took 1 or 2 more layers to really cover the whole area. For the highlights I used Skag Brown, also by Citadel, and then I mixed some light earth by AK Interactive into it to create an even brighter highlight color. The highlights were also applied by dry brushing because I love dry brushing. For the final part I finally glued the Sentinel to the base so I could finish the wiring for the weaponry. Like I already mentioned, I used a 9V battery for that build. The LEDs were connected in series, so I also had to add a 220 ohms resistor, otherwise the battery would cook the weaker yellow LED. But I did the electrical part off camera, because it was a pain in the butt to film every step. Sorry for that. For the final touch I added a bit of black paint with my airbrush to the smoke trail to make it look more realistic. And also some small bushes for the underground. Project done and another cool diorama in my collection. This was the second part of my Warhammer 40k series, and if you haven't watched the first part yet, make sure to watch the video as well. And as always, if you wanna see more projects like this, leave me a comment down below, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Alright, thank you for watching, have a good one, cheers.